Visionaries is proud to present our 23rd season on public television. All across the country, in big cities and small towns, a remarkable group of people are committed to the idea that the law can be a tool for empowering consumers and advancing economic justice. In our modern society, millions of people have little voice or power in an economy increasingly controlled by big corporations. The National Consumer Law Center, NCLC, is a network of Davids taking on Goliaths, big banks, financial services companies, predatory lenders, and their allies in Washington, D.C. NCLC advocates are the nation's leading experts in consumer law, cut from the same cloth as the legendary civil rights lawyers of the 60s. They work to protect vulnerable people from unfair, deceptive, and abusive practices, and promote the long-term financial health and security of those most in need.
NCLC is an advocacy organization for low-income consumers. We do a lot of work to change the law, to change public policy that affects low-income consumers. We write extensive testimony and comments to members of Congress and other public policymakers. So we do a lot of very detailed analytical work to explain why the law needs to be changed on their behalf. We also do a lot of work through our network of advocates to help empower them when they're representing individuals who've been ripped off or taken advantage of. So I think a lot of people who work in this organization, in this field, are driven by a sense that the game is really rigged against consumers, especially low-income, vulnerable people.
I'm Stuart Rossman. I'm the Director of Litigation in the National Consumer Law Center, and I've been with the organization 20 years. When I sit in that room and I hear the ideas, the first thing that comes to mind is how privileged I am to be able to work with some of the best experts in the world in the areas that we're talking about. When I need an expert, I don't have to hire someone. I just walk down the hall and I can talk to the people who literally wrote the book. So I'm very proud to serve with my colleagues who are an inspiration and also awe-inspiring in terms of the quality of the work that they do and the knowledge they have and the respect that they are entitled to in the broader community.
My name is Odette Williamson. I'm an attorney here at the National Consumer Law Center. I work on issues regarding older adults, our racial justice initiative, housing sustainability, foreclosure prevention. Passion for this work comes really from my background. Growing up in New York City, for example, and seeing some of the really abusive practices that have occurred, especially in very vulnerable communities, a lot of communities of color, communities with a lot of low wealth and low resources get some of the most expensive and exploitive financial products available. And when you see the suffering that really comes out of some of these financial products, you want to be at the table to really craft the solution and to craft better protections for consumers.
I'm John Van Alst, and I'm a staff attorney here at the National Consumer Law Center. It's a fantastic opportunity, both for someone to work on the issues we get to work on, but also to work with the other people that we work with here. I do talk to, really enthusiastic advocates across the country who say, my dream job would be to work at NCLC.
We are in a position to make a difference and to actually ensure that people can keep their house, can keep their lights on, can have the money to feed their families and provide the basics of life, should not be getting ripped off by payday lenders and other people who are just out to take their money in the most outrageous ways. So I think something that unites this staff and others in our field is that sense that it is just wrong that a lot of these horrendous practices are legal, and that we can make a real difference in the lives of some of the most vulnerable people in our society. We're at the Consumer Rights Litigation Conference. This is really a community that's coming together, people who share and learn from each other. So we have over 200 first-timers here at what we call the Newbie Breakfast, and they sit with experienced lawyers who've been part of this community for sometimes 15, 20 years. So they're really kind of getting to know the human resources in the community and make those connections that will last for years to come.
I want to make sure that our newcomers get a chance to see.
This conference speaks directly to what I do, so it really is a great opportunity to be able to meet people from all over the country and hear what's going on in their work lives is really helpful.
There are consumers who need help every day, and there are not enough attorneys to help those people. There's not enough resources to help those individuals. So to the extent that more attorneys, more public service groups can provide services to those people, that's a great thing that we can facilitate.
One of the reasons that this conference was even started was to make it possible for more people to have a private practice practicing consumer law. And people just failed one after another if they went out on their own, if they had no guidance, if they were trying to start from scratch, they would fall on their face. Coming here, you get mentors, you have role models, you see other people who are doing it, and it makes it possible for people to know they can do it and to see how it's done.
I think the thing that really unites people is their commitment to justice, consumer rights. Whether they're in legal aid or private practice, have identified themselves as being, on the side of the consumer, and really devoted their careers to this work and see it as something larger than just representing a client in a case. It's really a sense of mission and purpose to the work that people do here. Yesterday we were up on Capitol Hill meeting with representatives and senators in their offices, talking about the abuses that take place and how the law needs to improve. Because there are people losing their homes, losing their cars, they're out on the street, and we really need to come together as a community to make change.
Well, there. How you doing? Thank you. Good to see you.
Hi.
Thank you. So good to see you. Thank you for coming in here.
So we have over 100 advocates from around the country who are fanning out across Capitol Hill, talking with their representatives and senators about consumer rights.
Thank you. You're like water on the desert. We need you now more than ever. The big interests are well represented here in Washington. We don't have to worry about them. They have all the representation they want. So you're here for the little guy. You're here to make sure that there is, in fact, a real contest that is engaged in to get to the right answer. I am indebted to the National Consumer Law Center for what they did for me, and in turn, I try to pass it on by ensuring that every hearing is injected with the philosophy that you represent every single day.
Well, thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all so much for everything that you...
Elizabeth Warren has persisted throughout her life, and I'm honored to introduce you to our champion and our friend, Senator Elizabeth Warren.
When I've spoken at NCLC events, but I've been coming to NCLC events for a very long time, and long before I got to the United States Senate. In fact, so much so, it's a little strange actually to be standing up here. I keep thinking about what it's like to be sitting out there. Mostly what I would think when the keynote...
Years ago I said, I do this because I think it's in my DNA. I don't think I can actually get up every day and see a lot of injustice out there and not do something about it. When a homeowner comes in and is losing his or her home, if you look at it and you see it's the big bank, big corporation that's sort of coming down on this homeowner, I sort of see it as a David and Goliath kind of a fight. I need to be in there. I need to do that. It's part of me. I can't ignore that. And so that's the reason why I do this kind of work. The importance of the National Consumer Law Center is that it identifies current trends and national trends that are going on, educates advocates, and you're able then to look at the trends to go back to your community to see if those trends exist in your community. You are welcome to come to Michigan to see our community of advocates, of housing counselors and legal services who are doing the fight that I'm talking about.
So Lorraine Brown is the statewide consumer law attorney for Michigan Legal Services and has been working with NCLC for over 15 years now.
We provide resource support to all of the legal services programs in Michigan. So we provide case consultation, litigation support, whether it's co-counseling cases or taking over some of the cases for appeals.
It's really helpful to have someone here who knows what's going on all throughout the state. So we can work really closely together and share information, and our attorneys get a lot of really valuable feedback from Lorraine. So Lorraine, who are we going to meet today?
Well, there are two programs. There's the Lakeshore Legal Aid Program, which is a large LLC program that covers 18 counties in the state of Michigan. We'll also meet Michigan Legal Services. It's a smaller legal services program. They primarily do housing and foreclosure work, tax foreclosure.
Okay, great.
In most of our cases, the parties that we're taking on have more money, have more resources, they have more attorneys at their disposal, but I think with our attorneys' dedication to their work and their hard work, we're able to achieve good results for our clients.
The folks behind us are here to obtain poverty exemptions from their property taxes, and that's critical for avoiding tax foreclosure. In Detroit, 1 in 4 households has been in foreclosure, mortgage or tax foreclosure, over the past decade, and it's destroyed neighborhoods. Without access to legal services through our offices, these individuals would be facing foreclosure for failure to pay their taxes. So we're on the front lines of trying to stop the foreclosure crisis in Detroit. And we have been very grateful for the help that we are getting from the National Consumer Law Center and the Michigan Poverty Law Program, which provides access to expert assistance, not just with tax foreclosures, but also with mortgage foreclosures, and enables us to get quick answers when we need them so that we can serve large numbers of people.
And in Michigan, what happens if you get foreclosed on by the county for failure to pay property taxes is the property gets sold at a public auction. And so across the country and even across the world, speculators and developers heard that you could get properties for $500 at these property tax auctions. Companies like Detroit Property Exchange rely on a stream of mostly young people looking to be first-time homeowners who maybe have a little bit of money from a tax return or a little bit of money they've saved up, and they aggressively advertise towards this demographic, and they make promises. And one thing a company like Detroit Property Exchange can do is they will put you in a house quick. Now later you'll find out that the house is falling apart, but they'll put you in a house quick. And where Detroit Property Exchange gets these houses is mostly through the property tax auctions. And so companies from all over the world bought up properties for extremely cheap at these property tax auctions, and then went about looking to make as much money as they could while investing as little money as they could. And so they find people that are desperate for housing and that don't necessarily know what to expect and what to look for when buying a house, and they offer them something that might be too good to be true.
If you come to these conferences, if you've been coming for years, we've been talking about this issue for a long time because there are a lot of people who have been struggling to save their home.
I'm Sarah Mancini. I'm an attorney with the National Consumer Law Center, and I also work with Atlanta Legal Aid Society in the Home Defense Program. So in my Atlanta Legal Aid time, I litigate cases on behalf of individual homeowners who are trying to save their homes from foreclosure. When I'm working on my NCLC time, I am working on the books that NCLC puts out that consumer lawyers use to essentially to represent their clients. I'm also working on trainings and webinars and policy matters. So I talk with our other advocates about legislation that is proposed, regulations, and other work that we're doing on the national level to essentially make the marketplace more fair for our consumers. Every year we go to the conference, we get refreshed, we get new ideas. NCLC, I think, does a really good job of keeping the pulse on what's happening in the market. And these things evolve. I've been doing this about 10 years, and it started with the subprime lending boom, the foreclosure crisis, that for years we've just had huge numbers of foreclosures, and we've just been in triage mode. And now the foreclosure numbers are coming down, and we're starting to see new scams for people who are trying to buy a home, and they're being told that they're buying a home, but it's really something else. So I'm really excited to show Rich what we're working on and to kind of brainstorm with him about these cases and really have this back and forth that I get so much from in working with NCLC.
So she sees clients that have problems who are being ripped off every day, and then she uses that knowledge to help us do the public policy work and the training of lawyers around the country. So she does it all.
NCLC was saying there's this new scam going on. It's called the contract for deed, and we're getting a sense that this is a big problem. And so I started working on it for NCLC and working on the toxic transactions report that NCLC wanted to put out. And right at the same time, I started to get clients coming in the door that had these contracts from this national company that's been doing this all around the country. And I said, wait a minute, we've got to pay attention to this. This is something big. And I felt like I knew to look for that because NCLC was starting to work on it, and I was working on it with them. And then I see the clients coming in, and I see the real life impact that this is having. One of them was in the midst of being evicted when he walked in our door, but he thought he owned his house. There was no foreclosure. They just sued him for an eviction. He could have been out in 7 days. So really getting to work on those things, both with NCLC and with Atlanta Legal Aid, has made it work a lot better for me. So right now we're heading over to Zachary Anderson's home. He is one of our clients that has a contract for deed. And this is this home purchase scam where one of these large entities that has gone around the country buying up cheap houses post foreclosure for like $10,000, turned around and sold it to him for $45,000. And it's being sold through a contract for deed, which says you're gonna own this house only after you pay the full purchase price. Until that time, if you miss a single payment, we can kick you out and keep all the money you've paid and all the investment that you've made in this house. So he has invested tens of thousands of dollars in bringing this house into habitable condition because it was in really bad shape when he bought it. So we're gonna go see an example of that. When we started to see this issue coming in our door, it was clients who were in these contracts, and we looked at them and we said, these things are horrible. They're abusive, predatory contracts. What we didn't know at the beginning is that they've actually been racially targeted. And so once we started to see enough people coming in with this problem, we said, let's do some research on this. And we actually had an intern working for us that summer who started looking at the deed records and finding where was this entity operating. And it turned out that pretty much universally, all the properties that they bought were in predominantly African-American neighborhoods. And Mr. Anderson is an example of that. He lives in a primarily black neighborhood in Southwest Atlanta. And so that's where they were buying up these houses. And then they were advertising it solely by putting a sign in front of the house that said for sale. They were not advertising through any means that would have reached a broad audience. They were reaching the people who lived in these neighborhoods. Hey, Mr. Anderson. How are you doing?
Doing
good to
nice
see
to
you. This is Rich Dubois.
Very nice to meet you. Nice to meet you too. Thanks for having
Rich
us
is
out.
one of my bosses when I worked with the National Consumer Law Center, and he's really
Yeah.
excited to talk with you and hear about.
Great.
Is it okay if we head in?
Yeah, come
All right, sounds good.
Well, 2011, I purchased this house, thinking of buying a house,
Yeah.
it's gonna be mine.
Yeah.
Start fixing it up, repairs and all.
That's what they told you when
Yeah,
you
that's what they
when you
told
signed the
me.
papers?
Hey, congratulations. Here's your house. Go put the locks on your new house and you good. Come to find out that the house wasn't even registered in my name.
Really?
Yeah, so.
What did the house look like when you first moved in?
It was a shaft. It was run down.
Yeah.
Whole front side was mildewed and.
Oh my gosh.
Windows was bad. Back room had a hole in the ceiling.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. Well, it had a damaged roof, which I couldn't tell until after I got in here.
Yeah.
Till it just fell through. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Did you have to replace the whole roof?
Yeah, whole roof on the back half of the house, and I just had the whole roof on the entire house replaced just a couple of days ago.
So you started in 2011, so that's 6.5 years ago. And your principal balance has gone down from 46,000 to like 45, 44? So you've paid like roughly $40,000 in payments over the past 6.5 years, but only about 2,000 of that has gone towards the balance that you owe. The rest is all interest. And that's not to say anything about the money you have put into fixing the house.
Yeah. No, that's.
I mean, when you first moved in, it wasn't even livable.
No.
It didn't have a functioning stove, it didn't have a hot water.
None of that, no appliances.
So right now, the situation that Mr. Anderson is in is that this company could find a reason to say that you're in default on the contract, kick you out, and keep all the money you've put into this house and all the equity that has grown in this house since you've been here.
It's something that we're seeing in multiple regions around the country. Certainly the Atlanta area is one. I know in the Midwest there's a lot of activity in places like Ohio and Michigan. So we identified it about 3 years ago as something that we thought NCLC needed to get involved in and first raise awareness, showed how it does affect African American communities disproportionately around the country, and then say we need to change the law so that this kind of thing isn't permitted anymore.
We brought a lawsuit on behalf of 17 of those individuals against a single company. We were able to resolve all 17 of the cases. And of those, the 13 people who are still living in their houses, who had not been evicted from their homes, now have a deed to the property and have mortgages to their property as they originally thought they were going to have. The remaining individuals who had ended up being evicted were given monetary recovery to make up for their loss. And that case was resolved in December. I graduated law school 40 years ago, and my dream was to do litigation in a public interest organization, providing access to justice for low-income people and other vulnerable populations. So I'm living my dream right now, doing exactly the kind of work I want to do with the type of organization that I dreamed that I'd have the chance to work for. A national organization that has a mission, has a purpose, and is dedicated to serving the interests of consumers. What makes my work meaningful is knowing that when I'm ready to pass that baton along, there are going to be people at NCLC who will take it up and will exceed my footsteps in ways that I can't even possibly imagine. It is very reassuring, it's very, very exciting, it's very, very comforting, and it makes me very proud to work for this organization.
It's a matter of what do you want to do when you get out of bed every morning. What's the fire in your gut? Why do you want to do this? And I am inspired every day by the people that we represent. The regular folks, regular Americans, low-income Americans, people who are particularly vulnerable, older adults, people of color. It's a privilege, actually, to go and represent them in many of these forums where we are sometimes the only voice speaking on their behalf, the only voice saying that this isn't right, the only voice saying that this should change.
I think a lot of people, want to do the right thing and are willing to do a lot of work towards that if they're exposed to the problems. And so partly I think what it is that makes folks work on consumer issues, work at NCLC, work at these efforts is just having seen firsthand what a lot of these abuses can actually mean to people. And it makes you really want to try to do something about it. And this is the best place I know to try to do something about it.
Groups like NCLC are more important than ever to be out there on the front lines protecting people and finding how the latest technology, how the latest algorithm is going to affect average consumers, and that they need to be protected as things get more complex, more sophisticated, and easier to manipulate. We are up against enormous resources and power in terms of the power of the financial services industry and the lobbyists and the money that they have at their disposal to push their agenda. So we are very mindful of how we approach the issues and making sure that we convey the power of our message and of the human impact that these practices have on our clients and the communities that they live in.
These are the people who have our backs, the ones who are out there waging an unending battle to protect those who would otherwise have no voice or power. For the Visionaries, I am Sam Waterston.
Visionaries is brought to you through the generosity of Alice Rosenwald Fund, the Rick and Nancy Moskowitz Foundation, Winkler Family Foundation, St. Joseph's Indian School, the Ferry Family Charitable Foundation, the Episcopal Diocese of Western Massachusetts, Bill and Helen Close Charitable Fund B, Boston Private, Jonathan and Janny Kravetz, Lori A. Martin and Christopher Eisgruber, Mintz Levin, Open Society Foundations, the San Francisco Foundation, Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, First Hawaiian Bank, American Savings Bank, Central Pacific Bank, and Bank of Hawaii, as well as Beth and Brian Levine, Daniel and Eric Mandelblatt, Kara and Scott Friedman, Surdna Foundation, Diane and Charles Smith, Elizabeth Moore, John H. Beisner, KLM Foundation, Pilgrims, the Biela Foundation, the California Endowment, Wayne and Debbie Maycomber, with additional support by the following.